Hey guys, welcome to the JeepSolid garage. I'm going to show you how to take a gasket surface from this to this with just a few simple steps.
JeepSolid.com.
Now the first step, and possibly the most important, is to determine if our cylinder head is aluminum or cast iron. And the reason that is so important is aluminum head is much softer and easier to damage. How are we going to determine? That's where we're going to use our magnet. So over here on our intake manifold, got our magnet here. It does not stick. So this tells me the intake manifold is aluminum. How about on our valve cover? Nope, aluminum valve cover. Down here on the engine block, cast iron. And the cylinder head, cast iron. That's going to make it a lot easier to clean, as this is a much tougher surface than an aluminum head. Here's a look at some of the items we'll be using. Some shop rags, a magnet, plastic putty knife, actually a plastic knife. Here's some parts cleaner, degreaser. I'll link this in the description below where you can find this. Some real fine sandpaper, razor blades, wire brushes, drill, and a shop vac. Now if you look real close at the intake and exhaust ports, you'll see that there's actually chunks of carbon buildup on there. We don't want to get those down into the valves, so we're going to scrape those out real quick. And here's an interesting look at one of the intake ports and exhaust ports. You can see the intake has a lot more wet, oily look to it, and the exhaust port has just a bunch of dry carbon buildup. Now what we want to prevent is pushing chunks of debris down into the valves. And that's where I'm going to use my little plastic knife. All I did was take a candle and heat up the tip to bend it to make a nice little scooper so I can pull this debris out. Now we're going to take our plastic putty knife and we're going to go along and we're going to scrape the gasket surface, getting off as much debris as we can. Now being that this is iron, we can go ahead and use a razor blade to scrape the surface of it to get off any big chunks. You still want to be careful not to gouge the surface. If this was an aluminum head, you wouldn't want to use metal products to clean it. Now we're going to take our shop rag and just get all the major debris off. So now I'm being particularly careful not to get any debris down into the intake ports. So I want to clean them out a little bit more. I'm not going to use compressed air. We're going to vacuum them out. Now I'm going to use a little bit of this Gumout parts cleaner. I'll list this in the description below where you can find it. So this is real good at removing gum, varnish, dirt buildup, all those issues we're having right now with our intake. So this stuff will be real good at cleaning out some of those carbon deposits. So I'm going to put a little bit on my rag here and use it to wipe out these ports. Now you might not have to go through all these steps, but these intake and exhaust ports were so dirty, big chunks of debris in there that I really wanted to get them cleaned out a bit. So now I've actually cut 12 little pieces of rag here. I'm going to shove these into all the intake and exhaust ports. I'm relatively happy with how clean they are now. So this is just going to prevent any other debris from flying down in there while I finish cleaning up the surface here. Now let's hit the surface with a little more degreaser here. Now some of these areas up near the valve cover, I'm taking a nylon brush and scrubbing it down, breaking up all the loose chunks, and down here on the engine block as well. Then I can take a rag and wipe those areas up. Now because this is an iron head, it is okay to use a wire wheel on it, but with some caveats. You still want to be very gentle with it. Now some people like to use a really fine grit sandpaper, something you would wet sand with. This is 320 grit, and it's okay on a iron head as well, but then again, you got to be real careful that you're not scouring it. You want to just lightly sand it. Alright, let's spray it off one more time. Let's go along and pull our rags out here. And we're going to vacuum it out one last time. Now you don't have to use a wire wheel and sandpaper. I mean, you're not going to be eating off this thing. Most importantly, you just want to get all the old gasket material off and the surface clean. But I just wanted to give you guys some tools and options of different things you could do. So if this video helped you out, give it a thumbs up. Thanks for watching and be sure to subscribe. Now some people like to use a real super fine sand grit. You just need to make sure you have a nice clean surface and get your gasket on properly. You don't want to spend any